billion, win countless prestigious awards, and completely revolutionize entertainment. So how did they do it?
Alright, so the first thing to make this animation is to go to effects and then drag in a fusion composition into the timeline, and make sure the first fusion composition is 5 seconds and 55 frames long, and then the second fusion composition, just drag in another one, make sure it goes from 556 to 8 seconds. And then for the first fusion composition, right click, open in fusion page. This is where the main chunk of the editing is, so we'll start with this one. So the first thing, add a background node, click Control Space on your keyboard and just search up background and then add it. And then we started off with the Netflix logo. We added a transform to that and a color correction, and we connected that to the multi-merge. And then we added a text for the $200 billion, so this one's for the 200, and then we added one for the $1 billion. And what I did over here, we didn't actually adjust the transform, we didn't animate it in this, we adjusted it with the camera 3D, which I'll explain after. But I just made the size of the Netflix logo 0.75 and just make sure it's centered. And then for the text, put the Y axis for the $200, 0.6, around that. And then for the $1 billion, just put it to 0.33. And all that connects to the multi-merge. And then for the color correction of the Netflix logo, oh, it looks like I didn't adjust that, but alright, you can adjust it if you'd like, but yeah. Make sure the color correction goes to the multi-merge, transform 2 and transform 2 _1. They all connect to the multi-merge. And then for the grunge gradient, I added a transform and then a color correction and then another merge node. So for the grunge gradient, I made the global in 92 and the global out 512. So the global in and out is basically where it starts to play and it stops. So the end doesn't really matter because the layers in front are going to cover it anyways when it's time. So I just made it appear at 92, frame 92. And then for merge 1, and then for transform, I just made the size 1.35. And then I added a color correction. I just adjusted it to this. You can copy these settings if you'd like. And then for the merge node, I animated this. So at 92 frames, I keyframed the blend at 0. And then at frame 112, I made it to 1. And then at 135, it stays at 1. I don't know why I did that. That wasn't really necessary, but I guess I did. And then I just made the apply mode hard light. And then moving on to the next grunge background, I think this is the same one, might be a different one, but yeah, it's the same one. So I just duplicated it, copied the same setting, so I literally just highlighted it, Control C, Control V, and then just connected the nodes. And then for the confetti, as you can see over here, you might be able to see a little better like that, the confetti right over there. It was initially a green screen, as you can see in the title. So I clicked Control Space, I added a delta here, and this background color, I just dragged it onto the green space and it removed it. And then I added a transform node, which I didn't adjust, but I added it just in case I needed to. And then color correction, you can copy these settings if you'd like. Pause the video, copy it. I also added a time speed. I made the speed 1.51 and I moved the interpolation mode to blend. Sample spread 0. And then for the merge, I animated this quite a bit. So I keyframed it at 92, and then I keyframed at 92 at the blend at 0. And I went to frame 112 and I switched the blend to 0.7. And I went to frame 133 and kept it at 0.7. And then I animated it out, so at frame 141 I keyframed it and moved the blend all the way down to 0. And apply mode is normal, operator over. All these settings are default except for the blend, which I animated. And I don't know if I said this, but the confetti global in, make sure it's 92, and global out, it doesn't really matter. And then moving on to the person silhouette, I added delta here since it was initially a green screen. Again, I just highlighted this, I picked this up and dragged it onto the green space of the video. And then I added a transform node by clicking control space. And then I just set these settings, so center X 0.5, center Y negative 0.38, size 2.71. And then I added a color corrector. Feel free to copy these settings as well. And then for the merge 3, I animated this as well. So at frame, frame 90, I keyframed the blend at 0. And then at frame 107, I brought it up to 1. And then at frame 181, I just brought the blend is to 1. And then at 201, it fades out and the blend is 0. And then the global in and out is 92 and the end, whatever. Okay, now we did the person. We'll move on to this median 2. This is basically just a compound clip I got for the Netflix background, I'm pretty sure. So I added a transform. I didn't really adjust anything in there. I added a time speed. I made it 2.18. Sample spread 0. Interpolation mode blend. I added a color correction. Adjusted this quite a lot. Feel free to copy these settings by pausing the video. And then I added a merge node. I keyframed this. So at 0, actually I'll tell you the median in and out. So the median in is at 181. And the median out is whatever, just make sure it fits the whole clip or where it needs to be fit. And then for the merge node, I keyframed the blend at frame 76 at 0, and then I went to frame 91 and put the blend up to 0.4, and then I went to frame 181 and I brought the blend down to 0, and then at frame 201 I brought the blend to 0.4. And again, alpha gain 1, all these are default except for the blend. And the original text, as you can see on the screen, I added a text node. You can just do this by clicking control space and search up text, so it's this text plus node, or you can just drag it from right over here, drag it like that, connect it. Then I added a transform. I keyframed this. So for the original text, I just made the text original, and then font Microsoft Yahi, bold. I made the size 0.4. Everything else is pretty much default. Then I went to shading, so that's default. Yeah, so at element 3, black shadow, I enabled that. I made it black solid. I made the alpha 0.89. The softness, the X is 17, the Y is 18, glow 0.09, blend is at 1, so it's fully visible. Yeah, the transform, I'll tell you how I keyframe this. So at frame 181, I keyframed it at 0.6 and Y 0.5, and then I went to frame 356. So basically the end, wherever my fusion composition ends, and I just made the X center 0.23. I didn't adjust the Y value, it's still 0.5. And then for the merge node, again, I only keyframed the blend, everything else is at default, as you can see. So at frame 181, I keyframed the blend at 0.4, 0.5, around that. And then I went to frame 201, I brought the blend to 0.6, and then frame 293, I brought the blend to 0.496, 0.5, and yeah, because it's a straight cut. If you look at the MagnatesMedia, how he did it, it just stops, right? It doesn't fade out or anything, it just moves on to the next part. So after that, this is where I adjusted the first part, the $200 billion, as I said in the start. This is where I keyframed it. So I added a image plane 3D, merge 3D, render 3D, and then a camera 3D. You can just do this by clicking control space and just searching for each one of these and just connecting it. So image plane, you don't really need to adjust this at all. Merge 3D, you don't need to adjust this. render 3D, you don't need to adjust this. Camera 3D is where you animate it basically. I went to transform, make sure you're on camera 3D. At transform, so I was on frame 0. I keyframed the Z value, so this is the zoom basically. I keyframed at 1.65 at 0 frames. And then I went to frame 93 and I put the zoom to 1.43, so I increased it. So the more you decrease the zoom value, the more the zoom increases basically. It's a little weird, but yeah. And I adjusted the spline on this, so you can just go ahead and click spline. So mine already shows up, but if it doesn't show up, just drag the camera 3D onto here and just click the zoom to fit button. And you can see this is how my spline looks on camera 3D. You can adjust it to however you like, but this is what mine looks like. Okay, so we're done with this fusion composition. We're gonna move on to the next one. So this is basically just this one. How did they do it? So you can right click on the fusion composition, open in fusion page. So as you can see, there's not really much here, it's just the text and keyframe. So I added a background node, black alpha 1, and then I connected it to a merge node. I added a text, a transform, and a vignette, and that all connects to the media out. So the text, how did they do it? The same font as last time, bold, made the color red, size is 0.1181. You can adjust it to whatever you want. So I didn't really adjust anything on the text node. I added a transform. So this is where I keyframed it. So I started the animation at 0 frames, at size is at 1, and then I went to the end, so at frame 124, and I adjusted the size to 1.13, and then I added a vignette to that. So size 0 over here, so at frame 90, so I keyframed the size at 90 frames at 0.5, and I went to the end, so 124, and I adjusted the size to 0.435. And then for the anamorphism, I keyframed at 90 frames at 1.78, and then I went to the end, 124, and adjusted it to 2.1, 2.2, whatever looks best. And then the softness, 0.63. And make sure your border shape is at oval, operating mode advanced, and you should be good. And for the merge node, this is where I animated the opacity. So at frame 90, the blend is at 1, and at the end, it's at 0.7. So yeah guys, that's pretty much it for the tutorial. If you guys do want to see more tutorials like these, the step-by-step ones, and me recreating different edits, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and if you do have any suggestions on what I should edit, put a link down in the description or DM me on Discord. And yeah.